Got Sony hopes to entice PC players to PS5 by releasing tentpole games for consoles first. Look at it.
I've certainly enjoyed it so far.
Absolutely. Tom Ivan over VGC. Sony Interactive Entertainment has, quote, high hopes, end quote, for enticing PC players to PS5 by continuing to release its tentpole single-player games for console first. While its live service games will be released simultaneously on PS5 and PC, console players will continue to receive early access to Sony's narrative-driven titles. Herman Hulst and Hideki Nishino who will be the new joint CEOs of SIE starting on June 1st, discussed this strategy during a PlayStation business briefing on Thursday. By delaying the PC release of sequels like Marvel Spider-Man 2 and God of War Ragnarok, Sony hopes to attract users who have played the earlier games in those series off consoles to make the jump to PS5 in order to experience them sooner. Quote, indeed, we are bringing our titles to PC platforms and we have a dual approach here, end quote, he said current PlayStation studio Herman Hulst, quote, on the live service side, we are releasing our titles simultaneously, so day and date on PlayStation 5 and PC. But with our tentpole titles, our single player or narrative driven titles that are the backbone of what PlayStation studios have delivered in recent years and in our history, we take a more strategic approach. And we introduce our great franchises to new audiences, and we're finding new audiences that are potentially going to be very interested in playing, for example, sequels on the PlayStation platform. We have high hopes that we're actually able to bring new players into the PlayStation at large, but into PlayStation platforms specifically. Actually, the same goes for the work that we do with extending our great properties onto other media such as television, series, and film. For example, as you have seen with The Last of Us on HBO, Scott, and Gran Turismo, the film, which was a massive, dude, it did massive numbers.
Gran Turismo was really good, actually. I was surprised. I feel like I have to state that every time it comes up because I thought, oh, just a racing movie? How could that be good? But it was.
Yeah, so he continues, that brings in new players into our franchises as well, end quote. Nishino, who heads up PlayStation Platform Experience Group, also said, quote, console is a technology stack that we develop from the bottom up so we can provide a very, very good, excellent experience. The value of console will continue to remain, and our mission is to continue polishing that, end quote. He added, of course, some customers will move from PC to console. Customers who are focused on PC, if they find value, they will go to console. So rather than cannibalization, I think it's the opportunity for growth, end quote. Scott, what are your thoughts on this statement?
Oh, it's an interesting idea. It is an avenue for growth, but to direct people to console is something that I kind of thought was already the plan. So it's interesting to see that there's clarification on this now. I'm not going to sit here and wait forever for these sequels to the single player games because it's interesting though, because they're baiting the hook with something like live service games and single player experiences that I've had on PC that have been great. But I'm thinking for Destiny, if we look to the future, what's coming out in PlayStation's live service category? They've shuttered a lot of those ideas. A lot of those ideas did not come to fruition, but Helldivers was an excellent one. And Destiny is coming in the future. So could I expect Destiny on day one on PC? According to this, yeah. And is that going to be enough to take me out of buying a PlayStation? I'm not so certain. That's going to be different based on the individual.
Yeah. It's definitely an interesting approach where you look on the flip side of this, Xbox is like, yeah, you can play anywhere day one, right? They just want you in the ecosystem. For PlayStation, their approach is, we're going to hold back our single player, our narrative driven, the staples, will you say, of PlayStation, right? When it comes to Spider-Man, God of War, now Ghost of Tsushima. Ghost of Tsushima 2 is coming, Scott. Ghost of Tsushima, the director's cut just landed on PC. You and Corey are currently working on that one for review for the show. But you're not going to get the sequel when that drops day one, when I'll have it for console. right? Like that's the hook. This is where they're hoping to pull you in, right? And you wait 6 months, a year for that single player. Here's the thing. This is kind of more of a me thing. And even if I wasn't in the industry like I am, it's this just dropped. I need to play it now. Right? It's one of those things. I want to be a part of that conversation. What are you playing? Oh man, I'm playing this too. Here I am. I'm at this state. This is where I am in the game. This is how my character looks. This is how I played throughout this. Dude, did you sneak through here and you didn't take out this guy? Like, that's me, right? This is my personality and how I like to kind of make sure I'm up to date. I'm caught up. I've always been like this, right? I've always wanted to be in that conversation to talk about the latest games. They're looking for me. Dude, they're looking for me they haven't pulled on the PlayStation yet. I've always been there. So a little different. It
does make sense because there's a need for that day one spoilers. I'm waiting. I have a good example for how to wait or why to wait for PC. I'm thinking of God of War Ragnarok.
Sure.
This seems to be kind of a soft confirmation that God of War Ragnarok will come to PC. Just
Spider-Man 2.
It's been long enough. And Spider-Man 2. Yep, those are definitely possible coming down the line. But if I were to get on there, I already know some of the spoilers. I think all of them, but I don't want to check in the well of spoilers for that. But for God of War, I think I already know the spoilers. Nobody was going to avoid the Last of Us 2 spoilers, unfortunately. If you're on PlayStation, you were getting spoiled regardless. But this is one of these things. This is a single-player game. Maybe it is enough to pull me into PlayStation console, because if the story gets out, then it gets out, and then there's less of a value for me playing it.
Yeah, absolutely. The spoiler is such a heavy thing right now in our industry because of social media. Dude, it's so easy. The minute you see anything, just post it, right? And he's like, what are you doing? Why? But people love to spoil things. It's an unfortunate part of being in the games. Some people it bothers. Myself, dude, I hate spoilers. It drives me nuts. I don't want to spoil anything. I remember, I've told this story before, but Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, one of my favorite games of all time. My cousin spoiled the game. I didn't play it for 6 months. Dude, I put it down and I walked.
That's heartbreaking.
Right? Because that's like,
one of the best games ever created.
Are you serious? Oh, he goes, oh, man. Like, what? What do you mean? Oh, like, oh my goodness. How about you check people to see if the person has done the game yet? Right?
Yeah.
Like, don't spoil it. So for me, that was such a heartbreaker. It turns out it's one of my favorite games of all time, but still, it's one of those. Like, you only get to live that moment once. And then that's what PlayStation is hoping to pull in. So when The Last of Us Part 3 drops, dude, you don't want a Last of Us Part 2 spoiler. I avoided that because I went on media blackout.
Oh, yes, you did.
I played it. And I was like, whoa. But that was because it didn't get spoiled, right? And this is where PlayStation has something to hold on to. And I think this is a unique move because now it's talking about their games of service side. Yeah, we'll see how this pans out, right? Fair games. We'll see how that one goes. Marathon, nowhere near being done yet, right? Bungie's coming in next with Destiny 3 they're probably working on as well. Final Shape just wrapped up. So now we're moving on to the next round of whatever Destiny's going to be. So they do have things in the pipe that are coming out. We'll see how it goes. But is that enough to pull people in? Helldivers 2 is a huge example, right? Did monstrous numbers. So from there, part of us started going, are we going to get day-and-day release worldwide? Apparently not. Just the games of service. Why? Because games of service is you need a player base, right? You need that foundation to build that game. If Helldivers 2 relied on PlayStation only, it would not have seen anywhere the install base that it currently has. It has a lot to do with being on PC, right? Straight up.
Massive success, so much so that now it is informing the PlayStation's overall direction. And look at that. Arrowhead, an absolute slam out of the park.
Absolutely. Now my question becomes, when Fair Games drops, when Marathon drops, is that $40 as well? Because that's what it was when it came to Helldivers, but I think it's always a game-by-game basis. But it just makes me kind of curious. That's a great install base because it hit huge. It had the right price point, right? Price is always a sticky point. How high do you go? So we've seen other people just price themselves right out of the game. Will PlayStation follow suit with the Helldivers thing? Very curious to see what is next when it comes to the live service, and if that is enough to pull people in when it comes to a huge launch for a single player game, right? What's next? You got to think. At this point, Ghost of Tsushima 2
for single player, yeah.
Wolverine, dude, Wolverine.
Death Stranding 2?
Death Stranding 2 is another one, right? They've got them coming, and if you can only play it on PlayStation, unless you want to wait a year later and avoid spoilers that whole time, which almost feels near impossible to do. So it's just kind of one of those things, right? I don't know. We want to hear from you, though. ITGTV.com, and let us know if you're excited for this move in PlayStation. Heading to PC.